Hola mi gente, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos y bienvenidas. Me llamo Alba, aquí de Puerto Rico, en este canal sobre libros y algunos de Puerto Rico. Hello, how you been doing? Glad to be back. Welcome to all the new subscribers. I'm so grateful for you being here, and I hope you enjoy it. We're going to be talking about books, and some of them from Puerto Rico. Start off with one of the things that I wanted to do during the month of January, which I didn't get to do because I got sidetracked. But I was so excited to get this. My daughter ordered this fantastic book. This wonderful, wonderful book about Schomburg, Arturo Schomburg, the man who built the library in Harlem, was Puerto Rican. Did you know that? Yes. And an added bonus in this book is that it was illustrated by Eric Velázquez. Now, Eric Velázquez is a winner of the Pura Belpré, who was the first Puerto Rican librarian in New York City, the Pura Belpré Award for his book Grandma's Gift, which I have. And I have Grandma's Gift. This is a book that's also available. El Regalo de mi Abuela is also available in both languages. And then I have a signed book by Eric Velázquez. Love Eric Velázquez. Google him. He's fantastic. He's done a ton of books. He's illustrated a ton of books, beautiful books. And we went to a book signing in a little independent bookshop that unfortunately had to close its doors in El Barrio. And he signed it for my grandsons, para Sergio y Diego. This book is called Beautiful Moon. It has a very touching message. And there he goes, Eric Velázquez. I was looking for his other book in which he pays homage again to his grandmother and her records and how he used to dance with his grandmother in El Barrio of New York City. Wonderful, wonderful children's books. I highly recommend them. Let's see what happened in January. Let's start off with the read-along for Don Quixote. Started this having a lot of fun. Reading Don Quixote after many, many decades is a trip. I'm enjoying it immensely. I now can appreciate in that ancient language, in that ancient Spanish, and Edith Grossman's wonderful English translation, just how snarky Cervantes was. I'm enjoying it immensely. I'm going to continue this in February. And then, of course, I finished El Resplandor de Luz Bella, and I have a whole video on that if you're interested. If I remember, I'll link it in the description box. And of course, since I read Luz Bella, and that was my first encounter with Juan López Bauzá, I'm now going to go to the backlist and read Barataria, which is one of his novels. And the other novel is El Mar de Azov. I'm going to be reading those at some point. I don't say I'm going to do it in February, but at some point I'm going to read them. And then I read, because it seemed so, no, I read it because it was available on Overdrive at my library. I read Kintu. I don't do the little pictures yet. I read Kintu by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi. And I read it really fast because I was reading Luz Bella and other things. And by the time I noticed, they sent me a notice saying that it was due, and I read it in 2 or 3 days, I enjoyed it immensely. That was for, I think, reading around the world. Mel's Bookland Adventures. And so I've already read that one. I enjoyed it. And I read with Heidi. We did a buddy read of Oliver Sacks' The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. I'm going to say that buddy reads, for me, are crucial towards appreciating a book. Because if it hadn't been for Heidi, I would have thrown this book in the garbage. Why? Because of the anachronistic terms that were used in the years in which Dr. Oliver Sacks wrote the book. And if I had just concentrated on those anachronisms, I wouldn't have continued reading the book. Heidi was the one who reminded me, hey, this was, a lot of these stories were written in the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, when other terms were used for the conditions that the case studies represent. I'm glad that both she and I persisted in reading this book, because I fell in love with Dr. Sacks. Fell in love with his humanity, with his love for his patients as human beings, not as mere case studies. I was touched. I was really touched by the heart of this man. So thanks again, Heidi. I really appreciate it. I'm going to keep this book forever, even though it is yellowing with age. My daughter was going to unhaul this book. She was going to donate it to, I think, the Salvation Army. And I asked her, can I read it? And she kindly said yes. So I'm appreciative. Very grateful. And then my Puerto Rican read. Remember that I talked to you at the beginning of the month about Hostos, and Hostos' birthday is in January 11th. So of course I picked up this book, and very informative about the League of Patriots, La Liga de Patriotas Puertorriqueños de Eugenio María de Hostos. One of those leagues was established here in Juana Diaz because the assembly of island-wide municipalities was held here at the time that this was proposed, a League of Patriots. And the League of Patriots essentially was an attempt by Eugenio María de Hostos, who left his job administrating the Chilean educational system at the time in 1898, 1899. He left his post there in Chile to come back and be a champion for Puerto Rico at the time of the United States invasion. And he had ideas for creating civic awareness in the population all over Puerto Rico. And his idea was to establish leagues in every town to capacitate people to be able to form reasonable and make reasonable decisions, looking forward toward a plebiscite that would determine Puerto Rico's status in the future. And it was moving to me because at a certain point it was a very ambitious idea, based primarily because he was an educator. He's called the educator of the Americas. He planned to have all sorts of schools, elementary schools, night schools, vocational schools, so that people could become literate. There was a big illiteracy problem in Puerto Rico in 1898. 80% of the population didn't know how to read or write. And he saw that as the first obstacle to be able to make any kind of informed decisions in a democracy. So that was his idea. And from there, people would take inventory of their necessities, of their local needs, and address them in a self-sufficient form without depending on the government or on outside help. And that was his dream. And you could tell from the very beginning, when he finally got back to the island, how shocked he was at the conditions in which his fellow countrymen were. And it took a while for me to read it because at some point it was even depressing. You could tell that it wasn't going to be successful. As a matter of fact, he lasted for 1 year and then was recruited by the Dominican Republic to head their public school, their school system there. And he, as a matter of fact, he's buried there. At a certain point, this is a book that employs a certain kind of very advanced Spanish for people who like in academia, and it was slow for me, but I did it. At certain points it was repetitive, and it also includes a lot of original documentation in the back, including even the minutes. I would have enjoyed, I would have appreciated some of the reasons why, some of the examples of why the leagues were not successful in Puerto Rico. Hostos left within a year, alleging that party politics were the reason why they were not successful. And I would have appreciated having examples of how that occurred. They may be in the minutes, so I might have to go back and read the appendices. At some point, I wished I would have picked this one up instead, and at some point, I probably will, which is Juan Bosch, who was a leader in Dominican Republic's politics and a follower of Hostos' philosophy. I wish I would have picked this one up. So, we continue. Another book from Puerto Rico that I was reading in Spanish is Antulio Parrilla Bonilla, Obispo y Profeta de Puerto Rico. Antulio Parrilla Bonilla was a bishop in Puerto Rico during the 60s and the 70s. And he was a proponent of the theology of liberation. And he firmly believed that the edicts of the Catholic Church supported the claims of the poor for social justice. But, of course, he was ostracized. He wasn't given a diocese, and he wasn't included in the meetings and the Council of Bishops in Puerto Rico because of his controversial stance. I'm still in the middle of this book and I'm enjoying it very, very much. I'm going to continue reading this book. So then, you know that for January, there was Read Your Shelves, and one of my goals is to read more books from my shelves because I have a lot. So that's what I did. But I cheated. Because for a lot of these, I just used Luz Bella, because I love Luz Bella, and Luz Bella fitted most of these categories. For example, create your own category, Luz Bella. Bought new, Luz Bella. New to You, Luz Bella. Newest acquired, Luz Bella. Cover by Luz Bella. And then the other one is my oldest book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. Nonfiction, A Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. And if I had thought about it, I would have included gift, because I got this from my daughter. You can consider that a gift. And I would have filled out this diagonal line right here. Gift, bought new, free space, nonfiction, and create your own category. So this is much better than anything I've ever done before. So yeah, it's a win for me. So what's going on for February? For February, I have migrated, of course, Antulio Parrilla Bonilla. And for the Nobel Women's over at Brita Bowler's channel, I dug up my old yellowed copy of The Good Earth, which I read many, many decades ago. And we'll read it again with new eyes. I'm finally going to read this one because there's been so much talk about Kyu Suk Shin on BookTube lately. And I want to finally read Please Look After Mom, which was recommended by my daughter, the one who lives in New York City. Then for Black History Month, James Baldwin. This is another old yellowed book that I have on my shelves. Go Tell It on the Mountain. I just got this one because Books by Lanus recommended it highly. Winnie Mandela's Part of My Soul went with him. Thank you, Lanus. Appreciate the link. Then for Puerto Rico, I'm going to read Slave Revolts in Puerto Rico. This is available in English by Guillermo A. Baralt. For Caribbean, I'm going to read Sugar Money, hopefully, if I get to it. And I migrated in a book, bullet journal language. I migrated Canaan's Edge for this month. I renewed the audiobook. Yeah, I renewed a lot of stuff in the library. I renewed House of Impossible Beauties. Oh, that is heart-wrenching, but it's also warm because I recognize the language, I recognize the people, I recognize New York City, I recognize New Jersey in that book, and it's a great read. I'm like halfway through it, and I'm going to finish it. Great recommendation by, I think it was Adriana at Perpetual Pages that I saw at House of Impossible Beauties, and I am enjoying it so much. So let me leave it there. That's been the transition between January and February. I hope to be back with more videos, and take care. Cuídense mucho, mi gente. Nos vemos. Adiós.